دعاء الافتتاح.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك، وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وعثرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه، ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه، ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يده، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما. إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير، مع حاجة بي إليه عظيمة، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي، وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي، وصفحك عن ظلمي، وسترك على قبيح عملي، وحلمك عن كثير جرمي، عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك، وأريتني من قدرتك، وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا، وأسألك مستأنسا، لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك. فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب. إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك، كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك، فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله، ولا شبيه يشاكله، ولا ظهير يعاضده، قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتواضع لعظمته العظماء، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أنادي، ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصي، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازي. فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني، فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه، ولا يغلق بابه، ولا يرد سائله، ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين، ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين، ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها، وترجف الأرض وعمارها، وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق، ويرزق ولا يرزق، ويطعم ولا يطعم، ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت، بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك، وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك، أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي. حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكتك المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملنا، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغنا. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، وأعزز به ذلتنا، وأغن به عائلنا، واقض به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، وأعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشفي به صدورنا، وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا، وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله، وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله، وبضر تكشفه، ونصر تعزه، وسلطان حق تظهره، ورحمة منك تجللناها، وعافية منك تلبسناها، برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون، ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون، ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون، الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا، سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم، وأحلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، صاحب العصر والزمان، خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان، ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لن تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. First of all, I send my congratulations and Mubarak to the Imam of our time, our Maraji, all of you, my sisters and brothers, on this Jashan of Waladat ba Sa'adat of Imam Hasan al-Mojtaba alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst the ones who have husn, who have beauty in our character, in our deeds, in our relationship with God, in our relationship with others as well. Imam Mojtaba alayhi salatu wasalam, and I wanted to spend tonight, talking a little bit about him and extracting some lessons from his life like I like to do, and ensuring that we know a little bit about him. He was born on the 15th of the month of Ramadan in the year 3 AH in Medina. And, the birth of Imam Hasan was a grand celebration in terms of just the sheer happiness on the face of specifically Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This, of course, was the first grandson of his and the first child given to this immaculate family. And so when he was born, the Holy Prophet entered the room where Sayyidah Fatima was lying there, and she had a midwife in the room. And so she asked the midwife, "Can you please pass me the baby, pass me my son," he refers to it. So he held him and he looked at him, and this glow from his face, this happiness now emulating from him. And then he asked Imam Ali, "What have you named this child?" And Imam Ali says, "I would never name him without you," meaning I would not go ahead of you in this matter. This is the right of the Prophet to name our son. And then the Prophet would reply, "Well, just the same way you wouldn't go ahead of me, I would not go ahead of God and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." Jibreel just came down and told me that your new son's name is Hasan. Hasan, from husn, beauty, goodness, kindness. His life, unfortunately was one at a very young age that was struck with tragedy. At the age of 7, he lost his grandfather, the Holy Prophet. And we have to understand the first 7 years of his life, he was under the guidance and the tarbiyah of the Holy Prophet. Him and Imam Hussein, who are a year apart, they were up until, 6 and 7 years old. They were, everything from how to walk, how to talk, how to carry themselves, knowledge, all these things were given to them by the Holy Prophet. So the loss of the Holy Prophet was monumental for them. Within that short span of a year, they lost their grandfather and they lost their mother. And the mother was in the most difficult ways. And then they saw the isolation of their father, Imam Ali. They saw the era of the 3 Khulafa. They saw the era of their own father's Khilafat of 4.5 years, riddled with 3 civil wars. And even in his life, when he himself was made an Imam, his so-called companions were not the most loyal. Forced now for the baqa and the survival of the deen to come to the table, negotiate, and come to some peace treaty with the likes of Muawiyah. And yet, I mention all this because there's a lot of trauma inside Imam Mojtaba's life, a lot of trauma and grief inside of his heart. The one thing that he didn't allow that trauma to do was to harden his hearts, corrupt his hearts. Okay? And I say that only because when we look at his life, and by the way, this is that Imam that unfortunately there's been a lot of propaganda against outside of the Islamic circles, within the Islamic circles, right? just made up, fabricated stories of our hadiths about him being a mitlaq, as I mentioned, him being a habitual divorcer. One author writes 70 different women he would marry and divorce. Of course, that would be incorrect. Even within our own Shia circles, I'm sorry, the image that's portrayed of Imam Mojtaba is a very passive image, a very timid image. The reason why he came to terms with Muawiyah was because he wasn't really somebody who would like confrontation. He wasn't like his brother Hussein, who was ready now, to fight, almost as if some had even indirectly suggested that had the roles been switched between Imam Hasan and Imam Hasan, Imam Hussein would have waged war against Muawiyah, and Imam Hasan would have come to Sulah and some sort of treaty with Yazid during the days of Ashura. This type of propaganda, this type of false narrative within our own Shia circles, is still prevalent today. It is. And the reality is that I always say this every year, I have to say it wherever I go as well, is that we have to look at imamat not like prophethood. Nabuwah and prophet is on a vertical plane, meaning what? There's a hierarchy in prophethood. Absolutely, we believe that some prophets are higher than others. Of the 124,000 prophets, there are 5 ulul azam prophets. Of those 5, we have, of course, the best and the seal being our Holy Prophet, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's no doubt about that. So there is a vertical plane, but the imamat or the imams are to be seen on a horizontal plane, where each of them now are on the exact same level. We have perhaps, maybe I'm saying, not in a negative way, but we have perhaps given more importance to one over the other. Just look at the audience in our centers when it comes to 13th of Rajab, the birth of Imam Ali, and let's say, for example, the birth of Imam Jawad in Rajab. It's just not the same. Not the same decor, not the same outfits, not the same colors, not the same length of programs, not the same dinner, nothing. It seems as if, okay, and I get it. The first Imam, there's so much distinction, so much fada'il, everything about Amir al-Mu'mineen, but we have to begin to look at the Imams on a horizontal plane, that if you cut and paste them with anybody else of the 12 Imams, they will do exactly what the previous Imams did. So you place Imam Mujtaba on the plains of Karbala on the day of Ashura, he will do exactly what his brother did. And vice versa. They're one light, one nur, traveling through 12 different bodies. It's unfortunate that we just don't know enough about it. And reality is that one of the avenues for us now to be able to navigate through this pandemic is to adopt the seerah and the sunnah and the path of Imam Mojtaba alayhi salam. It really is. What do I mean by that? This was a man who had an immense amount of empathy, generosity, charity, would feel the pain of others and would look to now, relieve them of that pain. What is synonymous with his life is the fact that he would give and give and give. In fact, history says 3 times in his life he gave away half of his wealth. He would frequent the poor, sit with them, eat with them, break bread with them, talk with them, listen to their pains, to the point where some of the companions would say, Yabna Rasulullah, this is not appropriate for the Imam of the time to sit with this class of citizen. And he would say, this is where I feel the most comfortable. And then he would, of course, reciprocate that, meaning that he would open up the doors and allow those who were poor to come, as an open door policy, come and feast on my sufra and my dastakhan. In the process now, he was this manifestation and living entity of the verse I read for you in the khutbah, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ, that you will never reach the level of bir. A person who is abrar is a person who has bir. Bir, you might see in the Quran as righteousness. It's a good translation. But to understand bir, it's a little bit of a concept, right? So, the lexical meaning of bir is it's the opposite of bahr, right? It's land and sea. Bir being land, bahr being sea. For example, in the Quran, bir is also used in its lexical way. In Surah Isra, verse number 70, I believe. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَّلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ we have honored the human being, and we have allowed them to travel, move basically, from the land to the sea, meaning this whole entire planet was theirs now to discover. There, bir is used in opposite of bahr, land and sea, the lexical meaning. If we apply that in this idea of righteousness, because the whole verse says that you will never be righteous unless you give out of what you love. حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. Not just give out of what you love. It's very difficult to do that. It's very hard to give out of what you love. To give is one thing, but to give what you love. But Allah says that's why the reward is so high. Bir in the essence of Islamic morals and ethics means what? If bir is seen as a vast land, as earth essentially, as land, then bir is such that your amal, your deeds as a righteous person are so effective to others, literally it spreads all over the land. Your goodness is a vast reality that travels east and west. If you want that impact on mankind, if you want to make that difference, Allah says give. You know, it's incredible if you ask me. These small everyday things that sometimes we don't realize. For example, you know, I was, you know, talking to somebody a few weeks back. They just had a newborn child, about, you know, circumcision and about the walima and about the aqiqah and all these things. And, you know, the person asked, why this walima? You know that there are 4 mustahab walimas. And when I say walima, it just means to feed someone. It doesn't mean that you rent out a banquet hall, you invite 1,000 people, of which 200 you actually want there. The other 800 are just like people I don't know or I'm annoyed at. And then I feed them, right? No, it's just a matter of arranging food for others. That concept is amazing. It's almost as if God is saying, look, there are 4 monumental moments in your life where Allah says, I want you to be thankful towards me, right? What are they? Hajj, of course, is life-changing. A new home is a huge accomplishment, especially in this economy. Number 3 is a new child, again, life-changing. Number 4 is your wedding, right? The greatest day of your life, apparently. It was for me the greatest day of my life. Hashtag I know you're listening, right? So now God says, if you want to thank me for these 4 life-changing moments, I want you to thank me. How does God thank me? Now, how do we thank God? Does God want us to serve Him better? Or does God want us to worship Him better or praise Him? No, He says, if you want to thank me, feed others. Feed the poor. Feed your family. Feed those who are traveling. Feed your close friends. It's incredible to me. The avenue towards thanking Allah is the avenue of serving others. It humbles you. It includes others in your happiness. It shows Allah, God, the avenue towards your gratitude is by me, you know, feeding these people. And now, in this pandemic now, you can't have events. You drop food off. You do something, right? But the idea here is to me, it's incredible. That, you know, feeding others, giving to others is actually an avenue of the gratitude of God. And, you know, and by the way, let me just say this. I know there's a humming sound behind me. You know, there's some work being done in my house, unfortunately, which I could not escape right above me. So I've tried to keep that to a minimum, but I think you guys hear about, I'm not in some factory, don't worry. This is my house, and, you know, I am... I can't turn that machine off because it's critical to the process. So hopefully it's not that irritating, but just don't mind me. Anyways, so the idea of giving what you love. Now, we understand that this idea of generosity that we see in Imam Mojtaba, of course, comes from an environment in the home that he saw very famously 3 individuals come to his parents' house during 3 days of fasting, where they were asked to give their food or something to them, and they gave their iftar away, right? وَيُطْعِمُونَ طَعَامًا عَلَى حُبِّهِ الْمِسْكِينَ وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا Surah Insan, right? إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا, right? They gave their food ala hubbihi, out of the love of Allah, to who? Miskin, yatim, asir, a beggar, an orphan, and a captive. The very next verse was very, very important. And then it's almost as if now, the narrative goes from Allah now telling the story of the Ahl Bayt as an outsider to now they themselves taking over the narration of a story. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمَكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. Surely we gave out of the love of Allah, the essence of Allah. لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. We don't require from you a thanks or a gift. We give it out of the sake of Allah. That type of tarbiyah, that type of environment, that type of mahal, as you say in Urdu, is effective for the child. Remember, guys, to my young parents out there who have young kids, your kids are sponges. Sponges. Okay? When my kids now drop juice on the floor, which happens every single day, dude, why do you drop so much juice? I don't understand. Hold it with two hands, sit down. Sorry. So you drop juice on the floor, right? You grab the sponge and you soak the juice up. Then you go to the sink and you squeeze the sponge out. Will milk come out of that sponge? Will dyed Pepsi come out of that sponge? No. What will come out of that sponge? Orange juice will come out of that sponge. Sometimes I think that, we, as parents, we wonder, and I mentioned this, I think in one of the sessions, is the idea that, how do I create a pious child? I want him to be God-fearing. I want her to be, conscious of the Sharia. And it's not rocket science, right? If you want the output a certain way, the input has to be also a certain way. If you want that when you squeeze your child, God consciousness comes out, then allow him to absorb that God consciousness. Just like that sponge. Especially when they are young. The Holy Prophet now gave as much as he could in the first 7 years to Imam Hasan alayhi salam. And we saw his love, his softness, his ability now to tackle his trauma and look at his pain and direct his pain towards the softness of the heart. Sometimes hardship, struggles, difficulties, tragedy, all that could break us or soften us. He had this immense love for those who were seen as the mustaza'afin, who were seen as the weak ones in society. And he gets that from, of course, his upbringing. So when we talk about the idea of Imam Hasan and his amazing qualities, we think about his generosity. It's all I talk about, only because I think in this day and age, especially during a pandemic, we have to stop moving towards individualism and start moving towards communism, collectivism, especially in this pandemic. If for a moment right now, as you listen to me, you're thinking of a person who may benefit from you reaching out to them. Look, I've said this wherever I go. I continue to say it. This pandemic has had, to me, two polar effects on people as families, as individuals. People have thrived, have strived, have gotten stronger, have gotten closer to their family and kids. Their family unit has been the strongest ever. I get all sorts of messages, this and that, trying to better themselves as a father, as a mother, as a husband, as a wife, as kids, as siblings to each other. And then there are those who have really struggled, guys, really struggled. From their mental health to an abusive marriage, to them being at home all day, to my elders, as I mentioned before, just somebody who is so used to going, getting their community fix once a week. All that is now shut down. And I worry about them. Now, what gets them through those days sometimes is one message, man, one phone call. Can I bring something to you? Nowadays, you don't even need to call anybody. Just message them. One emoji, man. One emoji. The right one, though, please. Don't send them a frog or something. That's weird. The right emoji, right? I remember I got a text from an older uncle who was just trying to work out his phone. It was incredible. He was like, Salam Moulana, just sending you du'as. And then he sent me, the emoji of a police officer. And I had no idea what that meant. No idea what that meant. I'm not sure. Like, are you threatening me? Is there a cop coming to my, no idea. So the right emoji, please, okay? And having that empathy, sharing in the pain of others, You don't need to swoop in into somebody and have these, sometimes there are people in our community, right? You gotta love them. Unsolicited advice. They have you figured out. They got you pegged from a mile away. I know exactly what your problem is. The reason why you're down is because this. Or they say, look, just read more Quran and read more namaz and you'll be fine. It's not that simple, right? So not everyone requires you to swoop in and have a solution-first approach. No, don't have a solution-first approach. Just have a, let me sit in your darkness approach. If we want to extract a legacy from this celebration of Imam Mojtaba's, it is that we need to adopt a level of empathy and generosity with each other. I don't mean money. I don't mean just sending out iftars or dropping off a box of kujurs. That's great. That's great. But more or less is sharing in their pain. If that means that you just sit in their darkness with them and say, look, at least you're beside me, that's good enough. You don't need to walk in and say, okay, what happened exactly? Tell me. Okay, no, wait a second. No, you don't. In fact, sometimes it's annoying, right? People walk into a person who is riddled right now with problems, and the last thing the person wants to hear is somebody who thinks they have them figured out. It's irritating. Just have a listen first approach. Just listen. I get phone calls. I get phone calls from people who are just struggling. And I kid you not, after salam, dua, how are you? They begin talking. For a good half an hour, they're talking. They're telling me about everything. I'm not saying anything. I'm saying, okay, okay, yeah. Right. I'm listening, of course. Literally after some calls, after half an hour, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, you can see this. They're just kind of talking themselves out of their mood. Right? They're improving through the sound of their own voice. I haven't said anything. So at the end of it, they'll say, oh, I feel so much better. Say it. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate the advice. And I literally didn't say a single word. All you need sometimes is a person to sit there and just listen. Imam Mojtaba would sit there with the poor and listen to them. Imam Ali, his father, the very famous story of the older man, after his burial, would sit there and cry for 3 days until Imam Mojtaba came across him and said, why are you crying? He says, for 3 nights now my friend hasn't come. This is after, of course, the death of Imam Ali. 3 nights he hasn't come. What was the name of your friend? He would never tell me. All he would tell me is that the same way you are gharib, I am gharib. If you are poor, I am poor. He would let me get my struggles out. He become my outlet, and I felt so much better. I would look forward to his visit every single night. Right? In this world where we lack empathy, I'm sorry, we're kind of a me generation, right? What have you done for me lately? How can this help me? In this era, to revive the communal dimension inside of us, the social entity, that collectivism, where now we share in the pain of everybody else, is a lost art. Pick up the phone, go through your phone book, scroll through your contacts, right? And just message somebody randomly. Thinking about you, sending your du'as, that's it. Not asking them for directions or a number or a contact or, a hookup here. No, just, that's it. I tell you, I think a month before the month of Ramadan, I got a phone call from a member of my community that, of course, was a regular in our center. And I figured, okay, istikhara, fiqh question, this and that. No. Literally, it was a 5-minute conversation simply to tell me that we all miss you, Moulana. Our kids miss your classes. We miss your presence on Thursday night. Hope you're doing well. We see you on the live feed sometimes, but there's no face to face, and I just wanted to send you my salams. And that was it. That made my week. Forget my day. It just feels nice to be remembered. It feels nice to reach out. Right? And so, we need to revive that a little bit. I know, I get it. Everyone's going through their own stuff, and that's fine. And sometimes we think, well, I don't have my stuff figured out. I'm going to go and try to figure someone else's out. And we don't realize there is a direct connection between the two. Okay? My healing sometimes is ingrained in their healing. Okay? Think about what you're doing. It's incredible. If you are struggling, if you have to heal your wound, and sometimes we feel like, I'm down. And when you're down, your self-esteem is gone, your self-love is gone, your self-worth is gone. Imagine parking all of that finding and mustering up an inch of your internal kingdom to give to a person you could tell is right now scratching rock bottom. Imagine the message you send to them and afterwards that you send to yourself. That you know what? I'm not a terrible human being. And it's okay to do that, by the way. It's okay to stop and celebrate your victories. If you've parked your own pain and you have now gone to them, attempted now to rescue them from their pain, it's pretty incredible. I remember when I was going through something in my life several years ago, a very hard, difficult stage in my life, I would get phone calls. I remember one specific phone call I got from a guy who himself was drowning in quicksand. He never once talked about his issues. Not once. That phone call was about me. And I stopped and I thought to myself, you know what? He's also in pain. In fact, he's in more pain than I am. And I just had this revival moment for humanity, that not all is lost. There are still angels walking amongst us. You know what I mean? We have to revive that, guys. Right? All in the name of Imam Hasan and Mojtaba. All of them. Because if we want to now prepare, my last point at the Masadua, if we want to prepare for the arrival of our Imam, and again, I always say this, we are preparing for life under the Imam. Not just the bang of the zuhur. Not just the curtains parting and out comes the Imam, doves are flying and there's confetti and then there's balloons being released and then there's jashans and there's the decor and the Imam is here, hashtag he's arrived. No, that might be there. But ultimately what we're after is to prepare ourselves for life under the Imam. One of the things that we will see under the Imam's government is economic equality and justice, sorry. A strong sense of community, that the likes that we've never seen before. A sense of brotherhood, a sense of sisterhood. If somebody wants something you have, they will not hesitate to either grab it from you, knowing full well that you won't mind, right? Like right now, for example, if on my wife's side table there's a pen, okay, and I need that pen, I'm not going to call her and say, is it okay if I take the pen from your side? Dude, just take the pen, man. It's okay. She'll be all right. Grab the pen and start using it. I know she won't mind, right? That's a husband and wife. That will expand to a community, to a family, to a brotherhood, to a sisterhood. Are we ready for that? The more we kind of, me, my family, that's it. We're good. My husband and I have been the strongest ever. We're working towards it. My kids and I now are in a great place now. The five of us are really vibing right now. We're harmonizing. It's great. Share that wealth. Okay, part of generosity is to actually give your serenity a little bit and give your comfort and give your, that station you reached with your family. Now, mind you, with boundaries, with limits. Okay, Imam Mojtaba gave half of his wealth, not all of it. Why? The other half he went for his family, for himself. He's not going to rescue someone else out of oppression and then put his own family in that zulm and injustice. We're not going to rescue someone out of their own mental health and then place ourselves in mental health. No, there has to be a balancing act. That's the part that we don't understand sometimes. I think sometimes we give and give and give to others to the point where they're full, but now I'm depleted. Their stress and anxiety is getting better, but mine's getting worse. There has to be a balance, right? So if you are somebody who has thrived in this pandemic, who has elevated in this pandemic, who really now has come together and you guys are in a really, really good spot, and yeah, you worked hard for it. I get it. Share that wealth. Try to get that for somebody else. Again, listen first approach. If no one asked you for your advice, don't give it. Nobody asked you, I'm sorry. Don't pretend like you know what's going on. That may have worked for you, doesn't work for them. And if they say nothing at all, that's fine. What you've done is at least you let them know that, look, you're not alone in your darkness. Okay? So my sisters and my brothers, this is a beautiful celebration. Obviously, we wish we were together in the center. But nonetheless, let's make this celebration a practical one. Let's apply the legacy. Understand now, we all have trauma, we all have hardship, we all have scars. Use it to soften the heart, not to harden the heart. On top of that, use it as healing. How do we heal? We heal sometimes by being a source of healing for others. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept our efforts. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we've reached the midpoint of the month of Ramadan. Please, now this is the next 2 weeks are very, very crucial. We ask you, Allah, to give us that tawfiq now to use the first 2 weeks to benefit from the next 2 weeks, inshallah. Forgive our sins, accept our amal. I ask each and every one of you to please include me in your du'as in these